Welcome back, fellow goblins. My name's Lila. I don't have a critter today because my cats are running around. I have 4 cats, so I can't pull out one of my Burmese pythons unless I round them all up. But today, I will be talking about Burmese pythons compared to reticulated pythons and what makes the better pet. Off the jump. Both these species, Burmese and reticulated pythons, are not good pets if you are not extremely well versed in their husbandry and can afford to provide them with a gigantic enclosure and gigantic prey items. Off the rip. You know, even if somebody's like, well, I got them when they're small, I got them as a baby, they're not gonna be a baby forever. Eventually you're going to need a wall like this, or even bigger in the case of reticulated pythons. Up here is my female. This is my female ivory Burmese python. You can kind of see her little head right there. She is blind. She has what's called drop eye, which is unfortunately very common in ivory Burmese pythons. This is a timber wolf pelt, by the way. Down here is my male, Alduin. He is right there. And he has a bit more space because, unlike Orochi, he is not blind. He is also by far the most active of the two. And I used to have a reticulated python. I'll put a photo of him. His name was Parthenax. He was a Bali yellowhead, and unfortunately he did pass away from cancer, so I no longer have Parthenax, but he was so wonderful to keep. While I thoroughly love both reticulated and Burmese pythons, I will say that they are very, very difficult, both of these species. Burmese pythons are the 3rd largest species of snake in the world by length, and reticulated pythons are the 1st. Reticulated pythons are also the only species of snake to have ever been recorded to have eaten a human. So, while I'm going to be comparing these two, I cannot stress enough how prepared you have to be if you want to keep either of these species. And that includes dwarfs and super dwarfs as well, because those are quite large and do have complex needs as well. The first thing I'm going to be tackling is husbandry. The husbandry of Burmese pythons versus the husbandry of reticulated pythons. These two are very similar because they are both from South and Southeast Asia. First, I'm going to talk about Burmese pythons. Burmese pythons get their name from being from Burma, which is now actually known as Myanmar. So they enjoy very hot, very humid temperatures and humidity. High for both. This is very similar to the reticulated python, which is also from South and Southeast Asia. So high humidity, high temperatures for both. In order to do so, you need to provide an enclosure that can hold heat and can hold humidity. And you're going to need an enclosure that is large enough to contain the 1st or 3rd largest species of snake in the world. In terms of husbandry for Burmese pythons, they require a massive amount of floor space. These guys love to move around, they love to utilize their floor space, and they do climb, but they won't need as much height as a reticulated python. Down here, Alduin, he has a 12 foot by 3 foot by 4 foot enclosure. Because Orochi's blind, she has a 12 by 3 by 3. And they use all of that space, particularly Alduin. Alduin is very, very active, and he loves to climb all over his many, many branches. The main thing I want to harp on for Burmese pythons compared to reticulated pythons is that these guys, while they are primarily terrestrial, also love the water. So you're going to need to provide a large enough pond, because that's what it's going to end up being, where they can fully submerge, ideally where they can swim and stretch out, but at least fully submerge. You can see Alduin over here has a full pond with a spillway. I'll show a separate video kind of highlighting that. It is double filtered, so it's filtered by the pump and filtered by the spillway. And then Orochi up here has a pond as well that is filtered as well. It's not double filtered and it's not quite as large because, again, she is blind, but she can still fully submerge herself. Burmese pythons, in terms of enclosure, I'd say substantially easier, and I'm putting that in air quotes because this is still, giant. This is my whole wall. But substantially easier than reticulated pythons, specifically mainland reticulated pythons. You're going to need, and this is my opinion, minimum enclosure sizes are entirely subjective, but my perspective is that you should provide at least 6 feet of height. Reticulated pythons are extremely active, extremely intelligent snakes. They are constantly moving around. When I had Parthenax, my Bali yellow, he was always using his height. He was always climbing. He loved to stay in his little trees. I would provide for an adult at least 6 feet of height, at least 12 feet of length, and at least 6 feet deep as well. So you're going to basically need an entire room for a reticulated python. A way to get around this, if you're looking to save some money, and I'm saying this, you know, because if you're looking to save money, a reticulated python isn't going to be for you overall. I'd say easily my 2 Burmese pythons, even though their enclosures were incredibly expensive, their husbandry is in terms of like feeding and providing their enclosure was much easier than my reticulated python. But if you did want to save a little bit of money, you could look into getting a grow tent. You just have to make sure to make it escape proof. There are a lot of great videos on making grow tents for a whole variety of species. You can get grow tents that are, I actually just gave my business partner a grow tent that was, I believe, 8 feet by 4 feet by 6 feet. And she's using that for her young super dwarf reticulated python. So you can get a grow tent, but that is a temporary measure. I definitely recommend providing them like a room, essentially. Now I'm going to discuss diet for these guys. Again, diet is very similar for Burmese and reticulated pythons, but you are going to need to provide very large prey sources when you get larger snakes, especially, you know, when they're adults, right? When they're adults, they're going to need things like piglets. They're going to need things like lambs. They're going to need things like chickens, like full-grown, massive chickens. I feed my Burmese pythons, I feed them anywhere from large chickens to large rabbits. I've fed them piglets before. I've fed them large guinea pigs. I've fed them like just a whole number of things because I live in a very rural area, so I'm actually able to get a lot of stuff from local farmers, particularly when I went to college, because my college was in basically the boondocks, and it was a very agriculturally focused school. So around there were all sorts of places where I could talk to owners of farms and work out a deal wherein I could get those prey sources. Not everybody's going to have that. Another good way to get it is Rodent Pro has a very wide variety. I'm not sponsored or anything, but Rodent Pro has a very wide variety of feeders. I use them as well. But it is very expensive if you're not getting them directly from like farmers or I have a local rabbit breeder. It is expensive. Just in general, they're very expensive. But reticulated pythons in particular are even more so because reticulated pythons actually have a faster metabolism than Burmese pythons, so they should be fed even more often than Burmese pythons, which is going to lead to you spending more money. And the part of this reason is because they are, as I mentioned before, they are so incredibly active. Next up, I'm going to talk about handling. Handling is going to be very dependent, as with any reptile, on the animal itself, but I'm speaking to the overall species and the general consensus regarding the overall species. Burmese pythons, in my experience, and in many other people's experience, are substantially easier to handle than reticulated pythons. They are far more predictable in their body language compared to reticulated pythons. They also tend to be much slower because they are much more heavy-bodied compared to reticulated pythons, who are much more slender if it's a healthy retic because of how much they climb. And so it is much easier to predict a Burmese python's actions compared to a reticulated python's actions, which makes them substantially easier to handle. Whenever I used to handle my reticulated python, I would always wear PPE just in case, because those teeth are no joke. Overall, Burmese pythons and reticulated pythons do not make good pets unless you really know what you're doing and you have a very large saving fund and ability to get, you know, animals from local farmers or something. They are extremely expensive. Their enclosure is expensive. Their food is expensive. But reticulated pythons, in my opinion, are even more difficult than Burmese pythons. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree. Let me know if you disagree. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.